friends, we are going to make a memory mat or a memory little bowl. They're made the same way. They're just, this one is curved up, this one is laying flat. I'm going to aim for this one so that I can put a mug of coffee on it. I also love a little place to hook it on the wall or make it a little piece of art too. So this is where we're headed, and what we're going to use is strips of fabric. And why it's called a memory mat is, for me, I can think of projects that I did with this fabric that's left over, or you could use it to remember someone in your life. If you had someone pass away and you had some clothing of theirs or something that was very special to them that's fabric based, you could make it into bowls for your family. So how we're going to start is we're going to use, this is clothesline. You can usually find it at the dollar store or at a hardware store. And we're going to take and give ourselves about 1.5 to 2 inches at the end without any core. And then I'm going to roll, this is a selvage piece. So I just ripped off some selvage, so it's got some words on it. I'm going to roll that around and just put a little clip on the part that has the clothesline, so I kind of know right where the clothesline starts, because I'm going to start my roll the very inside of my piece without clothesline, and I'm just going to spin it up on itself. So I kind of have a nice little tight wound surface. You can't really pin this to hold this. You just have to kind of work. And depending on which way you spin it, there'll be a way it wants to roll in on itself. And you're kind of just making like a little tiny snail shell. And then I pre-threaded some thread, and I'm using actually very thin thread for this, but it's what I had on my needle. So I made my little snail, and I'm going to go in, and I actually haven't tied a knot, and I'm going to do 2 layers. So yeah, that just totally undid because I let go of it. But since I haven't tied a knot and I could tie a knot right here, I'm just going to do it that way. I'll get it reset. A little surgeon's knot, once around, then twice around. And that should hold it nice and tight. But I'm just going to throw another stitch in. And this first part is kind of loosey-goosey. Kind of get it done. You're just trying to get that end nice and secured. And then I can move my clip down a little bit and move my snail shell up a little bit. I realize you can't see anything I'm doing. So I just move my clip. Here's where my thing starts. And I'm just gonna kind of move my snailish piece down and reclip. Now this is when I'm going to start really managing this part, because at first I just kind of needed to get it started. So I folded it around, but instead of just folding it over each time, which you could do, I think the look is a little bit cooler when we take and move spin this around, and I'm just going to keep my thread out of there, but I'm going to start spinning this. And I really chose to put my colorful bit at the top and my white bit at the bottom, so my colorful bit is always covering my white bit. And I don't necessarily think it's important to like get this completely laid out before you start working again. So I'm just going to clip again there at the end and have my little end there and my little end here. And I'm just going to start working this snaily bit back towards the piece that I just moved. So it kind of wants to spring open every time. So I'm just futzing it with my fingers, and eventually I'm going to be able to see where I can go around. So see how I have that one stitch in? Now I can put a stitch right next to it, and I kind of want to use my fingers to place it. And now I'm going to spin it around again, because I've got two now nice and secured there. Now I'm going to aim for here to go around again. And here, and I'm just going back through the middle. Eventually I'll just be going back through the row in front of it. But for right now, I need to kind of catch up. So I'm going to keep going through the center and get it caught up. There we go. Now I need to go here. There we go. And I'm just kind of going around in a circle into the row in front. So now it shouldn't spring open anymore. It should be kind of captured. So now I have that first little middle done. And I'm going to need to replace my thread because I only have that much left. And I'm going to need to start rolling this a little bit more. So I'm going to leave that clipped. I'm actually going to throw a clip in here while I work on tying off a knot, just so that I don't get any looseness from this procedure. And how I'm going to tie a knot is I'm just going to go in to a bit in and out, and then I'm going to go through, but I'm going to come back through and catch both my tails and push them down my needle as I pull out. And then I'm going to do it one more time just to be sure, through both the tails and pull tight. And then because I have a lot of bulk here, I'm just going to push it back through and clip it on the opposite side of where I tied the knot. So then I won't have an end pull out by accident. So I'm going to go get some more thread pulled up, and then I'm going to roll this bit. Yeah, my next step would be getting this part ready. So you're kind of just setting it in, and this is a game of like in the long run, not in the short term. And I love the torn edges because I actually like the fluff in the final piece. It just adds really cool texture. So I'm a little tight there. I'm going to kind of pull it a little bit longer and try to cover as much yarn as I can for each pull around. And as I get to the end, I'm just going to pause again and put a clip in. So a clip is your best friend. A couple clips is your best friend in this project. And I think that doesn't look a lot like a selvage edge. And the selvage edges usually just, in some people's studios, go in the garbage, but in my studio they become bowls, or I love fabric rope too. So My next working edge would be here, and I just go around. I'm going to pause it and get some more thread threaded and maybe do a little bit of work and then come back. Okay, I got a few more rounds done, and I wanted to do this transition with you. So I like to take the older piece, the piece that is on the project, and just line this piece up with maybe the last inch of it, and then roll that on. It's not as hard as it looks, as always. You kind of just have to think your way through it. And because you're going to have a raw edge, you really want to pinch as you're doing this part. So pinch hard here, and there's some extra little bits of thread I'm going to just take off. And then as I'm rolling, here's where the end is. And I'm going to kind of pinch that end down and re-roll this one. If this one is folded, you could roll that way too with a fold in it. I prefer it to be pretty flat. So I'm gonna go in and pinch hard here, but now I'm through it. And you can kind of see a tiny bit of purple popping out right here, but you're not gonna notice that when you're finished with your project. And you know for sure then it's really nicely solidly anchored. As soon as you start sewing it on, obviously it'll be anchored really well. And I'm gonna go maybe 2 more flips around. And clip it off, clip. And I'm gonna get back to my snail building. And I really wanted to talk to you guys about building your snail towards your holding hand. For me, that's my left hand. My right hand is the sewing hand. So my holding hand, my working hand, is the one I'm working the snail toward. If it's opposite, you can just flip it over and work in the direction you need to. Because I want to hold the working end here, and then the piece, pinch it with my thumbs here. Because then when I'm sewing, I'm not sewing toward my holding hand. And what I'm trying to aim for is in between these two pieces. I really don't want to go through the middle of that clothesline if I can help it with my hand, because it's just adding more tension than I want to most likely. And I want to pull it tight enough that I am sucking up that little bit of a crack. You can kind of see, you see that little bit of light coming through right there. When I pull this, all I may need to do is kind of cinch that together so there's no light. Now I'm going back into that hole and through, and that one, my thread jumped up and went diagonal, and I don't want that look. So I'm just gonna pull it and then pull tight again and move it to where I want it to be. And eventually you'll be like kind of looking at where your last stitch was and where you want this stitch to be. But I think these look best when they're a little bit higgledy-piggledy. I think they look kind of fun. That way you can line them up completely and add different colors and add emphasis stitches in with like thicker thread. This is really straight off. This is hand sewing thread. I have done every other one I've ever done. I've done in embroidery floss or like tapestry floss. I just had done some hand sewing earlier, so I am hand sewing these on, or using hand sewing weight, just to see what it looks like, see how different it is. I did do one on my machine, and I'll show you that. So this was done by my, I think at the time he was maybe 12 or 13. And this was done by me with embroidery floss. This one was done by me, and it was a much bigger piece. I intentionally left the hole in the center, and I tried some experimental stuff, added some extra fabric, added a little extra blob, was really trying to keep my colors tight, and my yarn colors pretty tight too, but I did add some metallic threads in there, which was kind of fun. And then finally, this piece I did on my machine, and these are all of the scraps. So these have very small throws of fabric because these are all the scraps that came off of all the masks I made in 2020 as part of every sewist that I know made a ton of masks for their community. So this this bowl, especially this kind of plate bowl, has a lot of meaning to me because it's from a very particular time in my life, and so kind of neat and beautiful. So for me, this is a memory. This is something that will live in my house and remind me of a time that was hard, and I didn't want to keep all those loose scraps in my studio. But what a beautiful way to hold them. So that's the project that we're headed to. So if I was trying to make a bowl here, sorry about the camera, I don't have my camera mount, I would just shift this up on top and sew it around that way, and then slowly make a bowl up. I'm really trying to make a flat piece, so I'm just going to keep it side by side. But if I wanted to make a bowl, I just start shifting it up and just keep going up and out. Kind of like you want to see a tiny bit of that one below to make your bowl shape up like that. Okay, for our last little bit of instruction, we are ending it. And I took the last little bit of thread I had, this blue thread lined up, and I went just a little bit through in all different parts. I tried to like space it so the throughput line was not all the way in a straight line, just to secure. Now I'm not dealing with this being loose and trying to do the next thing I'm trying to do, which is to make a little handle. I just think they look cute with a little handle. I think it's kind of fun to have one. So what I did was I started a new thread of white, just so you guys could see it better. But I've got the knot buried in the hole. Remember that in between your stack is where you want to bury all those knots. And then I'm going to take this piece and just clip it back and make a little handle. I don't need to sew any of this out here. I only need to sew right through here. And I'm actually going to try to sew through this bottom part very securely, so because it's going to get a lot of tugging and kind of thrashing about as people pick it up by the handle. So I've got it clipped, but I've got it clipped back from the end, and I did the same thing in the beginning as in the end. I ended the yarn part back here, and this is just this ribbon. Okay. So I started my white a little bit farther back. So I'm going to go just do my normal, where I'm going in between the last row and the row before it to get it started and secured. So 1, 2. And I've got my finger there just to kind of direct it where I want it. I don't want those to sit directly on top of the blue ones or each other. Well, I think they're there. So I'm just going to put one more in and hopefully get this one to sit where I want it to sit. So this is just to get our thread really set and ready to go. And if you're using the same thread, you could always just, if you have more, you could come off the end and just start securing it. But for me, I didn't have any more, so I'm just doing another one. Now I'm going to do one next to this one. So now I'm going over both ends. So both the out and the back will be secured in here. And this clip might do us better if we kind of go through the loop and really secure that bottom loop. And then you could take and just put the top of the clip over the top of the loop. That really puts this in a good place for us to sew to. So I'm going to get it held again how I want it. I'm just pulling tight. Now, instead of going up and over, I'm going to do that a couple more times. But I'm going to take my needle and go through this hole. Can you see that? And secure, like go through these two pieces. So I'm catching a little bit of the tail and a little bit of the loop before it and pushing the needle through. And I'm going to do that same move again where I'm getting the bottom and going over a little bit and securing it just to this side of the mat loops. So I'm kind of just skimming a little tiny, taking a tiny bite out of both of those, about half of the bottom handle. The top handle is not going anywhere. It's been secured all the way from back here, right? But the bottom is our loosey-goosey bit. Let's do one more on this side. So we're going to go straight through. And I like to do this before I tighten all of it down. So now I have 3 stitches on this side. I'm going to just go around. So I'm going through, not biting anything, just going straight through that hole. And now I'm going to flip my piece because this side isn't secured at all down. So it could get wonky if we don't do both sides. So now I'm through this hole and I can just go through like we did before where we're just doing our normal stitch all the times we've gone before. It looks like I got a little knot. There we go. Through, and I've got a loose thread. Don't worry about that. That's just a tail. Now I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going in and biting part of the bottom loop and part of this hole. Can you see that? So I'm not going through this part at all, only getting this and this bit. And I'm going to do 3 of the on this side. Why 3? It just always feels more secure to me than 1. So getting it again. Now I've got a little bit where this is poking up a little. So I'm going to just use my finger to push that back down. And then as I'm taking a bite, I can kind of use my needle to shift it to where I want it. But I might actually have to do more bites on this side to secure down that tail. It looks like I'm going to need to. So I'm just going to keep working it and getting it secured. I might even, I think I will, I'm going to go off of the end here. See how I'm biting the bottom part and into this piece. Now, what I like to do is get all this work done underneath and know it's there. I might even, I'm going to do one more and I'm going to tie a little knot here. So I know that even if the thread breaks later on with lots of use, I've got a secondary knot that's just going to secure this. So I'm going through my end, pulling tight. Oops, my tail's in there. So I need to pull my tail. I'll do it one more time. Through, just a little bite. Through the end, pulling tight. Now it's super secure. Now I'm going to go, this is a little too big for me, and I don't want to see. I don't need this clip here anymore because this is part of the piece now. And I don't want this loop to be that big. So I'm going to actually push it so this loop is only enough to get your little finger in. And I'm going to cover all those baby stitches with just squishing down the outer ring. So I'm flipping it back to the way I like to stitch, which is towards my holding hand. And I've got my threads coming off the back side. So I'm going to go in here. Now it'll be tighter because there's lots of little stitches through there. So you just want to find a spot that's easy to get your needle through. One, maybe two more. Let's take a look. So now we're going through here. Sorry about the lighting. We're in the northwest and it's starting to get dark. Just a little bit earlier than I had planned. So I will have to get these filmed a little earlier in the day. So now I'm just going to go back a little bit, do a crisscross, and then I'm going to start knotting, and we are done. And this is the final piece. It's great for a drink. Even good for a small bowl or hot plate. It would be great Christmas gifts to do for a family, to make little hot pads, or I like to call, I think everybody likes to call them mug rugs for everybody. Okay, 2 knots. One more, just for safety's sake. I like to do them in 3s. 3 knots, and then I'll cut off my end, and I am done. So fun. Thank you for stitching along with me, and happy stitching. I hope this was a fun project for you. I have made many of these and plan to make many more in the future.